Hey, have you watched the new episode of One Punch Man lately?
Nah, I told you, I don't watch anime.
Hey, how about we watch one episode of anime together? And if you don't like it, then you can stop watching.
Fine, but only one episode.
That was crazy. I told you, bro.
Actually, I've always wanted to go to Japan.
No way. Then why didn't you watch anime?
I love everything about Japan, but I just haven't been exposed to anime yet. But after watching that, I just want to go to Japan.
Damn. Hey, I've been wanting to go to Japan too. Do you want to learn Japanese together?
Let's do it, mate.
Hey, it's been a week. How have you been going with Japanese?
Horrible, really. I can't make it sound like the anime at all.
What, really? I find pronunciation so easy. Here, listen to this sentence. 私の友達はかっこいいです.
What the hell? How are you so fluent?
I don't know, it just feels so natural for me.
Maybe I should drop Japanese.
So I see you're struggling with Japanese there, Luke.
Hi, Mr. B. I'm really struggling in Japanese, but Ben seems to be cruising along.
Well, let me give you a bit of insight to why Ben here finds it so easy, but you're struggling with Japanese. First, we must understand the basics of language. Languages provide a form of communication that involves the use of words and systematic methods to organize those words to convey meaning from one person to another. Language is only one form of communication, given that many animals communicate through physical gestures, posture, movement, and even odors. However, language is the basis to human interaction and communication. Also, language acquisition is an important fundamental to understanding language, and is the process of learning how to utilize and comprehend language through writing, speaking, and other ways of communication. There have been several theories about how language acquisition occurs, such as behaviorism, which was proposed by Frederick Skinner and stated that children learn language based on environmental factors that reinforce associated words with their meanings. For example, let's say a baby sees a car and blurts out car. When a mother smiles and replies with correct, the baby will understand that the object is indeed a car, and this will fuel their development. However, in the 1950s, Skinner's theory of behaviorism was heavily contradicted by the influential linguist Noam Chomsky. Chomsky argued that if a child learnt language based on language input alone, they would never be capable of constructing the complex and infinite sentences that humans can. Instead, Chomsky suggested the theory of universal grammar, that language is innate and that babies are born with the ability. This doesn't mean that babies are capable of speaking fluent English as soon as they are born though. Instead, they are born with the ability to form sentences and interpretations from different words after vocabulary is learned. Also, we should talk about the parts of the brain that are responsible for allowing us to use language.
Oh, I remember going through this in class, Mr. B.
Oh, would you like to explain to Luke then?
Yeah, sure. Well, you see, Luke, several parts of the brain are responsible for generating and interpreting language.
The bronchus area is a region located in the frontal lobe which is responsible for language formation, allowing humans to speak and ultimately communicate through language. The angular gyrus is another part of the brain which is important to language functions. It is associated with complex processes such as reading, writing, interpretation, and organizing information to allow the brain to understand words and concepts. Furthermore, the Wernicke's area, which is located in the temporal lobe, works with the angular gyrus in order to process words and sequences and understand the meaning of sentences. It comprehends speech, which can then allow the brain to formulate a response. These areas have been able to be identified through modern technology and brain imaging techniques. Functional magnetic resonance imaging is a common technique that detects oxygen levels in blood flow and can then determine if the part of the brain is functioning, allowing certain areas to be pinpointed to a function.
Also, I think that it is important to understand how native language work. The first language that is learnt since birth is referred to as a native language. All languages when learnt as a first language are equally difficult and will come naturally to the speaker. Eventually, reaching fluency. The environment that a child is exposed to also has a large impact on what language the child becomes fluent as a native language.
For example, if a baby grows up in an English-speaking family in England, they will become fluent in English as this is a language they are constantly surrounded in. However, if their parents speak another language at home, like Chinese while growing up in England, the baby is likely to become fluent in both languages. This is because the baby would be in a stage known as the critical period for learning languages from about birth to 6 years. Since children have high brain plasticity, their ability to learn new information and create new neural pathways would be at its peak. As a result of childhood being a critical period for developing language abilities, if the critical period is missed without learning the first language, it will become impossible for the child to achieve language acquisition at a high standard. However, for second languages, learning them at childhood is only a sensitive period, but chances of fluency fall about at the age of 10. This means that after this age, although it may be difficult to achieve fluency, it can still be possible but will require a large amount of effort and work. Instead, it is much more likely to reach a standard near fluency.
That's correct, Ben. Also, the native language is actually a massive factor that affects the difficulty of learning specific second languages. Learning a language that is similar and related to a first language is much easier than learning a language that shares no similarities at all. The language roots tree diagram can be referred to, which displays the ancestry of languages, so it can identify which languages share similar roots. Unfortunately, the language tree diagram only shows all Indo-European languages. As depicted on the diagram, Spanish and Portuguese are located on the same branch, which suggests that it would be easy for a Spanish speaker to learn Portuguese and vice versa, since both languages share alike features. On the other hand, it would be very difficult for an English speaker to learn Japanese, as Japanese does not share any roots.
So that's why I was finding it so difficult to speak Japanese. It's because it's a completely different language from English. Well, I guess Ben was better because he had his Chinese roots.
Also, there was a research study conducted in Britain led by Dr. Sophie Scott that carried out several brain scans on Mandarin and English speakers. It was found that English speakers used their left temporal lobe when hearing English, but Mandarin speakers use both their left and right temporal lobes in listening to Mandarin. This suggests that different languages utilize different areas and functions of the brain. Different native languages will develop different areas in a person's brain, which is why language roots exist, as it will be easier to learn a language that uses the same functions of the brain, opposed to having to develop new neural pathways for brain functions of a completely different language.
So if languages have roots and share them with other languages, what makes two languages similar and easier to learn?
That's a good question, Luke. Pronunciation and sound of a language is a major factor which can affect how easy a language is to learn compared to others. Most languages will have different accents from each other, but there are also sounds which may not be a part of one language. An example is the Spanish O, which differs from the English O sound. Contrasting English, there are various tongues that an English speaker would definitely find difficult to pronounce and would need lots of practice to develop the ability. Take a look at this video of the Khoisan Click language.
Another factor could be cultural differences between each language. A language can have many subtle but noticeable differences in speaking that may be difficult for many second language learners to pick up. For example, the Japanese language incorporates many levels of politeness, having special titles to address to different people, while English does not. Japanese people will call their upperclassmen senpai to show respect, while this concept is unknown to English culture. It could be hard for English speakers to adapt to this difference. Vocabulary and grammar are more components of language that can be similar or differ with other tongues based on the roots of the languages. Some languages share the same words and follow the same grammar patterns, which would make these ones easier to learn. However, others have completely different alphabets. English has an alphabet of 26 letters as we know, while Mandarin has a designated character to each word. Speakers from both languages would find it hard to adapt to the unique writing system, making it harder to learn.
Thanks, Mr. B. Now I know why I find Japanese so easy to learn.
No problem.
And now I know why I'm struggling.
Why don't you give French a try? After all, French does share more similarities with English than it does with Japanese.
Great, I'll just give it a go then. Au revoir.
Sayonara.